Portugal walked into the 2026 World Cup with arguably the deepest, talented squad in the entire tournament. A defense built on Champions League winners. A midfield that several pundits have called the best of any nation in North America. Wingers who terrify fullbacks, a reigning English Premier League player of the season pulling the strings. On paper, this is the most complete team Portugal has ever sent to a World Cup. The most balanced, the most frighteningly good. And yet, the single biggest question facing this team as it opened its World Cup campaign was not about any of those players. It was not about the midfield or the defense or the wingers. It was about a 41-year-old wearing the number 7 and the captain's armband. A man who is, without argument, the greatest goal scorer in the history of international football, with 143 goals for his country, more than anyone who has ever lived, and the only human being ever to score at 5 different World Cups. The question is simple, and it is brutal. Is Cristiano Ronaldo the thing that will finally win Portugal a World Cup? Or is he the thing standing in the way? Because here is what makes this story so uncomfortable. We have seen this exact movie before. We watched it unfold 4 years ago in Qatar, in real time, in front of the entire world. And now, against every expectation, against the wishes of a nation that worships him, the same problem has come roaring back, bigger, louder, and with the clock running out on the only career it could ever attach itself to. This is the Cristiano Ronaldo problem. And the World Cup has it again. To understand why this is a problem at all, you have to understand what a strange and specific kind of problem it is. Because this is not a story about a washed-up player who cannot get a game. Ronaldo still scores. He scored 25 times in 30 appearances under his current national team manager, the best goals per game ratio he has ever produced for Portugal under any coach in his entire career. He finished among the top scorers in the Saudi Pro League this past season. He started Portugal's warm-up matches before the tournament. He is not a passenger. He is not being carried. The problem is gravity. Wherever Ronaldo stands on a football pitch, the entire team bends toward him. The ball finds him. The free kicks belong to him. The penalties belong to him. The shape of the attack reorganizes itself around his runs, his demands, his presence. When you are 23 and the most explosive forward on the planet, that gravity is a gift. The whole team orbiting around the best player in the world is exactly what you want. But Ronaldo is not 23. He is 41. And the question Portugal cannot escape is whether building an entire World Cup campaign around the gravity of a man in his 5th decade is a tribute to greatness or a tactical mistake dressed up as loyalty. So let us start with what Portugal is being asked to bend around him. Because once you see the squad, the problem comes into sharp, painful focus. This Portugal team is loaded. In central defense, Ruben Dias, one of the most respected defenders in world football, alongside the elegant Goncalo Inácio. At fullback, João Cancelo and Diogo Dalot, both capable of playing for almost any team on earth. In goal, Diogo Costa, a shot stopper who has bailed his country out of more than one penalty shootout. But it's the midfield where this becomes almost absurd. Vitinha, João Neves, and Nuno Mendes all arrived at this World Cup fresh off winning the Champions League with Paris. These are not squad players. These are the engine of the best club side in Europe. Add Bernardo Silva, a player who has spent a decade making Manchester City tick. Add Bruno Fernandes, who in the most recent Premier League season scored 9 goals and set an all-time league record with 21 assists, and who was named the division's player of the season. Fernandes is a master of the killer pass, the kind of player who can unlock a packed defense with a single touch. He has quietly become Portugal's most dangerous creative force. And then there's the attack beyond Ronaldo. Rafael Leão, the explosive winger. Pedro Neto, all pace and directness. João Félix, the gifted forward who once carried a nation's expectations himself. And Goncalo Ramos, a center forward, who 4 years ago did something that lit the fuse on this entire debate. We'll come back to Ramos, because what he did 4 years ago matters more than almost anything else in this story. The point is this: Portugal does not lack for options and does not need to be propped up. This is a generation that, by any reasonable measure, should be among the favorites to win the whole thing. And the central question hanging over all of it is whether the most decorated player in the squad's history is helping that generation reach its ceiling or quietly lowering it. Now, in fairness, you have to make the case for Ronaldo, because it's a real case, and the people who dismiss it entirely aren't being honest about who he still is. He remains a genuinely capable striker. He can still attack a cross and still time a run into the box. His finishing instincts, the thing that made him great in the first place, have not deserted him the way his legs have. And there is a serious argument that, in the chaos of knockout football, with the game stretched and one chance dropping in the box, there is still no one on earth you would rather have arriving at the back post than Cristiano Ronaldo. There's also the matter of leadership, of aura, of the thing that can't be measured. Ronaldo has dragged Portugal to trophies before. He was the talisman when they won the European Championship in 2016, their first major trophy of any kind, and he is the only surviving member of that triumphant squad still in this World Cup team. Just last summer, he scored the equalizer in the Nations League final against Spain, a tournament he finished as top scorer, before Portugal won it on penalties in Munich. He was substituted late in that final, exhausted, and wept on the sideline as his teammates lifted the trophy. 3 major trophies with his country. He has earned the benefit of every doubt. And his manager clearly believes in him. The numbers under the current regime back it up. No previous Portugal coach has gotten more goals per game out of Ronaldo than this one. So when the manager keeps picking him, it isn't blind sentiment. It's a coach looking at his own data and deciding the old warrior still delivers. That's the case for the defense. It's not nothing. Hold on to it, because it matters. But now, we have to talk about the numbers that won't go away. The numbers that turn a sentimental selection into a genuine sporting problem. Because for all his records, for all his goals, Ronaldo's World Cup story has a hole in the center of it that has never been filled. In 22 World Cup matches across 2 decades, Cristiano Ronaldo has scored 8 goals. 8 goals is a fine return, but every single one of those 8 goals has come in the group stage. Not one of them has ever arrived in a knockout match. Not one. The man who has scored more international goals than anyone in history, the man defined by enormous moments on enormous stages, has never once found the net in a World Cup game where defeat meant going home. It gets sharper. In all those matches where Ronaldo has recorded exactly 1 World Cup assist, and that too came in the group stage. Compare that to his great rival, who has racked up 6 World Cup assists, and the picture of how the 2 men play the game becomes painfully clear. One of them threads the play together for others. The other has spent his career, understandably, hunting the goal himself. That hunting instinct shows up in the set pieces, and it's here that the modern problem really lives. Ronaldo has long claimed Portugal's free kicks as his personal property, even as his success rate from them has collapsed. He has scored just 1 goal from a direct free kick at a major international tournament in his career, and that was back in 2018. Meanwhile, standing right next to him on every dead ball is Bruno Fernandes, a genuine free kick specialist and the team's most dangerous creator. The sight of Ronaldo waving Fernandes away from a free kick he is far less likely to score has become a quiet symbol of the whole dilemma. And so the deeper questions stack up. He doesn't press the way the modern game demands. The blazing pace that once let him terrorize defenders is gone. For 4 seasons now, he's played his club football in Saudi Arabia, a long way from the intensity of a World Cup knockout. The reasonable doubt isn't whether Ronaldo is good. It's whether a 41-year-old who no longer presses, no longer sprints in behind, and no longer plays week to week against elite opposition can be the focal point of a team trying to win the hardest tournament on earth. Portugal is betting that he can. And to understand why that bet is so terrifying, you have to go back to Qatar, because that is where this problem first exploded. It was the winter of 2022. Ronaldo was 37, and the cracks were already showing. He opened the tournament by scoring a penalty against Ghana, which made him the first man ever to score at 5 different World Cups, a genuinely historic moment. But the football around him was getting uglier. In the final group game against South Korea, the manager substituted him, and Ronaldo reacted badly, appearing to mutter angrily as he came off. The manager was furious. He spoke afterward about the importance of every player respecting the group, the team, the collective. Then came the decision that shook world football. For Portugal's round of 16 match against Switzerland, the manager dropped Cristiano Ronaldo to the bench. Not as a tactical rotation, as a statement. It was the first time Ronaldo had not started a match at a major international tournament in 14 years. The greatest player in his country's history, sitting in a bib on the substitutes bench, in a knockout game at the World Cup. In his place, the manager handed a first competitive start to a 21-year-old named Goncalo Ramos, a young striker who just days before the tournament had barely featured for the national team at all. What happened next is the reason this story exists. Ramos scored a hat trick. Portugal did not just win, they dismantled Switzerland, 6-1. The team that had looked stodgy and predictable with Ronaldo as its fixed point suddenly looked fast, fluid, hungry, alive. Players moved into space that had previously been occupied by a static, demanding center forward. The whole attack breathed. One Portugal midfielder said afterward that most of the world had never even heard of Ramos before that night. By the end of it, everyone had. And here is the line that haunts the Ronaldo problem to this day. Portugal did not miss him. The greatest goal scorer in the history of the sport sat and watched a 21-year-old score the hat trick that he himself, in 22 World Cup games across 16 years, had never managed in a knockout match. When Ronaldo finally came on late, he had a goal ruled out for offside, and that was that. The story, of course, did not end happily. In the quarterfinal, Portugal ran into Morocco and lost. Ronaldo, restored to the team or coming off the bench depending on how you count it, trudged down the tunnel in tears, his 5th World Cup over without a trophy, without a knockout goal, and with the uncomfortable memory of having been benched still hanging in the air. The team that had looked unstoppable against Switzerland could not break Morocco down. Whether that was because of Ronaldo or in spite of him, people have been arguing ever since. That is the original sin of this whole debate. That one night in Qatar proved, in the most public way imaginable, that Portugal could not only survive without Ronaldo, but could actually be better. And once a nation has seen that, it can never quite unsee it. You might have thought the lesson would stick. It didn't. Because the gravity reasserted itself almost immediately, and the pattern simply repeated. A new manager came in after Qatar, and Ronaldo, far from being eased out, was reinstated as the absolute centerpiece. He kept scoring in qualifiers and friendlies, kept hitting milestones, kept being Cristiano Ronaldo. And when the next major tournament arrived, the European Championship in Germany in 2024, Portugal once again built everything around him. It went the same way it always goes. Ronaldo did not score a single goal in the entire tournament. Not one. He missed a penalty in a knockout game and wept on the pitch before composing himself to convert in the eventual shootout. And Portugal, for all their talent, went out in the quarterfinals on penalties to France. Another major tournament, another exit, another competition in which the team's biggest name and biggest commitment of resources produced no goals when it mattered most. Add it all up and the trend is impossible to ignore. Since Ronaldo became the fixed focal point of the Portugal attack, the team has failed to get out of the group stage at a World Cup twice, and has not advanced beyond the quarterfinals in either of the other 2 attempts. The most talented generations in the country's history keep crashing into the same ceiling. And the one constant across all of it, The one variable that never changes regardless of which coach is in charge or which golden generation is coming through is the man wearing number 7. Now, to be fair, those failures are not all on him. Portugal has often been criticized for playing too cautiously, too conservatively, for failing to unleash the attacking talent at its disposal. A coach can build a timid team with or without Ronaldo. But the inconvenient truth is that the most fluid, most fearless 90 minutes Portugal has played at a World Cup in the last decade was the 90 minutes they played without him. And that brings us to the new chapter. The reason the problem isn't just back, but is arguably more serious than it has ever been. Because this time, the Ronaldo question doesn't just hang over Portugal's tactics, it hangs over his very availability, and it's a problem entirely of his own making. Rewind to a cold night in Dublin in November of 2025. Portugal needed only to avoid disaster in their World Cup qualifying group, and instead, they walked into an ambush. Ireland, roared on by a packed and delirious crowd, defended for their lives, and struck twice on the counterattack through Troy Parrott. Portugal, for all their possession, could not break through. And as the frustration mounted, Cristiano Ronaldo did something he had never done in the 226 appearances for his country. He got himself sent off. Tangled up with the Ireland defender Dara O'Shea as they waited for a cross, Ronaldo spun and swung his elbow into the defender's back. The referee initially showed yellow, but after reviewing the incident on the pitch side monitor, upgraded it to a straight red. For the first time in 2 decades wearing the Portugal shirt, Ronaldo was being dismissed, and the reaction made it worse. As he left the field, he was seen smiling sarcastically and applauding, a gesture many read as aimed at the Ireland bench after he had publicly accused the opposing manager before the game of trying to influence the referee against him. His own manager came to his defense afterward, calling the red card harsh, arguing that the action looked worse on camera than it really was, pointing out that a captain who had never been sent off in 226 games surely deserved some credit. But the elbow was the elbow, and suddenly, Portugal's greatest ever player was facing the very real prospect of missing the start of what everyone knew would be his final World Cup. Under football's disciplinary rules, an offense like that can carry a ban of 3 matches or more, and for weeks the question of whether Ronaldo would even be allowed to play in the World Cup opener was a live one. In the end, the governing body handed down a 3-match ban, but suspended 2 of those matches, placing him on a 1-year probation instead. He served a single-game suspension in Portugal's final qualifier, which they won to seal their place at the tournament, and was cleared to play in North America. The timing of that lenient ruling raised eyebrows. It was handed down only days after Ronaldo had attended a high-profile dinner at the White House, an event also attended by the head of world football's governing body. People noticed. People always notice. Whether there was any connection at all is something no one can prove, and it would be irresponsible to claim otherwise. But the optics fed straight into the broader unease, the sense that the normal rules seem to bend around Cristiano Ronaldo the same way the football pitch does. So here is the situation Portugal now carries into this tournament. Their captain, their focal point, the man the entire team is built around, is a 41-year-old playing on a probation. That means a single rash swing of an arm could activate a 2-match ban and rip him out of the team in the middle of a knockout run. The temper that has always simmered beneath the surface, the competitiveness that made him great, is now a genuine liability hanging over the whole campaign. That is new, and it is part of why the problem is more serious this time than it has ever been. Which leaves the manager, Roberto Martinez, holding the most delicate decision in world football. And it's worth understanding exactly why he can't simply solve it by sitting Ronaldo down. Start with the obvious. Ronaldo is the greatest player in his nation's history, the captain, the record holder, a man whose face sells the team to the world. Benching him is not a normal selection call. It is a national event, a decision that would dominate every headline and follow the manager for the rest of his life. The last man to do it in Qatar won the game 6-1 and still couldn't fully escape the controversy. Then there's the awkward fact that there isn't a clean alternative, The obvious replacement up front would be Goncalo Ramos, the very man who scored that famous hat-trick 4 years ago. But Ramos endured a quiet club season this past year, scoring just 12 goals across 45 appearances, well down on his sharper previous form. If he had arrived red-hot, there would be a genuine debate. Instead, his dip in form has given the manager cover. No center forward in the squad is banging the door down loudly enough that Ronaldo simply cannot be picked ahead of him. And so the gravity wins again. The manager keeps faith, partly out of belief, partly out of his own data showing Ronaldo still scores at a strong rate, partly because the icon's status is a force of its own, and partly because no one else has grabbed the role by force. The argument for starting Ronaldo isn't crazy, but notice what it really is. It's an argument that rests less on Ronaldo being clearly the best option, and more on no one else being clearly better. That is a very different thing from the days when picking him first was the easiest decision in football. The cruelest part of all this is the comparison that Ronaldo can never escape, and it sharpened into focus the very same week Portugal began its campaign. Because just one day before Ronaldo took the field for his record-equaling 6th World Cup, his great rival did the same thing. Lionel Messi, at 38, walked out for Argentina and promptly scored a hat-trick in their opening win. Two men, the two defining players of their era, both reaching the unprecedented milestone of a 6th World Cup within 24 hours of each other. But the contrast could not be more stark. Messi, at 38, remains the absolute fulcrum of the Argentina team. The player everything flows through, still creating, still dictating, still the man his country is correctly built around. He lifted the trophy 4 years ago and ended the great debate in the most decisive way possible. Ronaldo, at 41, is the player his country may need to win in spite of, the focal point, who might be the anchor, the legend whose gravity could be the very thing dragging an otherwise spectacular team back to earth. That is the heart of it. Both men chasing the same final glory. One of them is the engine. The other might be the brake. None of this is a verdict on Ronaldo's career. His career needs no defending. He is one of the greatest footballers who has ever lived, a phenomenon of longevity and willpower. A man who has scored more international goals than anyone in history and dragged trophies out of teams that had no business winning them. Whatever happens in this tournament, that legacy is permanent and untouchable. But greatness and usefulness are not always the same thing, and that is the uncomfortable truth at the center of this story. The Cristiano Ronaldo problem is not that he is bad. The problem is that he is a legend. And you cannot bench a legend the way you bench a normal player, even when the team might be better for it. The problem is that the gravity which once pulled Portugal toward glory may now be pulling its most talented generation back from it. The problem is that everyone can see it. The whole world can see it. And yet the weight of who he is makes it almost impossible to act on. We saw it in Qatar, when the team caught fire the moment he sat down. We saw it in Germany when the goals never came and the exit arrived right on schedule. And now we are watching it unfold one final time, in North America, with the clock running down on the only stage Ronaldo has never conquered. He will keep starting. He will keep demanding the free kicks and the penalties. The team will keep bending around him the way it always has. And Portugal will be praying that this time the gravity pulls them toward the trophy instead of away from it. Because the brutal reality is that for Portugal to win this World Cup with Ronaldo as its centerpiece, the 41-year-old will likely have to do something he has never done in 22 matches and 2 decades of trying. He will have to score when it matters. He will have to deliver in the knockout rounds. He will have to play, at 41 years old, the best tournament of his entire international life. That is the BET Portugal has made. That is the problem they have chosen to carry. And one way or another, by the end of this tournament, we are finally going to find out whether the greatest goal scorer who ever lived is the answer to Portugal's World Cup dream, or the reason it slips away one last time? Is Cristiano Ronaldo Portugal's greatest weapon or their biggest problem? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear it. Like and subscribe for more hard-hitting football documentaries. Until next time.